Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the World Cup edition of Morning Coffee or Tea with AmericanScouser.com. I'm your host, as always, Timuchin, with my coffee, doing the greatest dad thing again this morning, starting off the week great. And with us, shockingly awake on a Monday morning, is the Polish Prince.
Get in.
Power of the World Cup, people. The power of the World Cup. That's on it. And got coffee.
Flowers.
Oh, flowers.
It's actually chocolate milk.
Oh, well, we're getting there slowly but surely. At least we got a mug. Okay. So the World Cup has begun with a lot of action and a lot of talk and stuff. So we're gonna get to all that kind of stuff. But we figure like there are a couple of headlines that we should probably take a look at. So first off, we call you the Polish Prince. So obviously you have Alan is with us again this morning. Good morning, Alan. You have like a Polish background, hence Mateusz, and all that kind of stuff. So, which team are you going to be rooting harder for? USA, who plays later on today, or Poland? Let's get the allegiances set up.
Okay, just so everyone knows and everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So when people talk shit, they can talk shit accordingly.
so I will have a USA jersey on underneath the Poland jersey. Right, and whoever gets knocked out first,
so that's actually half
away.
A step before better than doing the splits in the middle bullshit.
Unless you're a parent of two kids that play against each other, you should never split the jerseys. Just
Honestly,
have both.
Just
proudly.
Don't wear a jersey. Wear like
just don't do one.
Wear a Liverpool jersey and just go there.
Yeah. No, I always support Poland over USA in all competitions.
Okay.
I think this. I don't believe Poland is going to get out of the group, though I did put it in the predictor that they would, just because I can kind of balance out my surprises with my disappointment. They're starting the worst defense probably in the entire tournament, so I can't. There's not much to look forward to. But in the same token, I don't know if the U.S. is going to do that great this year either. So I'm kind of stuck rooting for two mediocre
You don't have
teams.
Cash? Your boy Cash is not playing?
You realize Matty Cash is the best defender in that back four?
Really? See, that's scary.
Yeah.
That is scary.
Yeah. So, which I'm glad they brought him in, but yeah, they're still starting Kamil Glik, who's 37, and he physically can't move anymore. Dude was broken at Monaco 5 years ago, and he's still playing in the national team. It just doesn't make sense.
Just trotting them out there.
Like,
even though you're not a hardcore US fan, you have to explain this concept to me and to anybody who's followed adult football for a while, that US has named Adams as their captain for the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's Weston McKennie's hair that we see in the cover. But anyway, so this is like a weird concept to me. Apparently, they rotate captains like it's a U8 team. Why do they do that? Because, I mean, I've never heard that, because being a captain is not just carrying the armband. I mean, that almost like diminishes the role of being a captain to me. Why do they do this?
So essentially what Berhalter does is they have a committee. So it's captain by committee, and they have a group of guys that are in that committee, and that's why it got rotated all the way across the last several years that Berhalter's been at the helm. So I guess before this World Cup, they decided that, hey, let's have the players all get together and decide who is going to be the captain for the tournament. And Tyler Adams was the name that was picked the most. I'm thinking they probably just took names and put them into a hat, and then they shuffled up the hat, and maybe Adams had like 20 in there, and Pulisic had 2. And maybe Aronson had 1, and so they just picked the name out of the hat, and Tyler Adams it was. So
that's like an interesting concept to me, because to me, like I say, it diminishes the role of the captain on what it actually means, and it just seems very odd. Like, I've never even heard. I mean, if anybody knows another team that does this, maybe I haven't heard of this, but have you heard of this before? Like,
no,
in pro soccer,
I can see having 3 specific guys being captain during whatever time of the year it is. As long as that player's fit and playing, then he's captain. Just like you have your club captains, right? You have the 3 guys who wear the armband, and whoever's playing takes the armband. Yeah. But I've never really had a situation where I've understood the committee thing, and it's almost like when you're at school, you're a hall monitor. You're just given a board. But then, I can turn around, go to the next classroom, and just throw the board at anyone else and go, hey, you're hall monitor now. Like you said, there's not much merit to it. There's nothing behind it.
Yeah, it just sounds very, very odd. I did not know. When I heard that, I was like, my first reaction was, is like Captain America out? Is that's why he's maybe like he's starting and he's the captain rest of the way or something
It's
like
probably
that.
her.
So, and then I was like, wait, they keep rotating. See, Sparky says, can we do captain committee at Liverpool and get rid of Henderson? And this is exactly what I mean. It like diminishes the role of the captain, because I think Henderson is probably like one of the best captains I have seen, not only at Liverpool, but I think in soccer in general. Obviously, you got to follow the club to know a lot better of how good of a job as a captain they do. But the way he leads, the way he sets the example, aside from, playing as hard as he can, despite people like Sparky over here who don't understand the value of Henderson. And I will admit that he has diminished over the last season and a half, maybe. There are still things he does out there that not everybody does as well.
Playing quality is one thing, leadership quality is another, and that's why a lot of people were saying that he was taken to the World Cup in due to his leadership abilities and due to him being a good person to have on your team overall for whether it's morale or whatever the case might be, especially for the younger guys.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, acclimating the new guys, the young guys, and do like all those are like behind the scene things, getting people together and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that these guys had to do. That's like actually like, different, obviously, than at the pro level. It's a lot different than all the U8 captain system that the US.
I think even U8s have one captain. I don't know, man. That's U6 maybe.
So the World Cup started. I was rooting for Ecuador mainly due to my boy Valencia playing there, who also plays for Fenerbahce, kind of a deal. But so happy to get him say that. Happy to win my first parlay of the World Cup and stuff. What did you make of the game overall? Obviously, we started with that questionable offside call, and obviously raises questions instantly in terms of how this thing. And at the end of the day, even though I really had to research to find it, the call might be maybe right, even though it's like, oh no, the computer is telling us. But did the computer have a Qatar bias in terms of where they place the guy's foot or whatever? We don't know. But what did you make of it overall? Like the entire day as the World Cup opener, what do you say?
Yeah, I think it kind of went as we expected it to go. A little bit of controversy, Qatar being kind of played out of the water. They don't have a strong team, especially when you go up against the likes of Ecuador, and they're going to have Senegal, and then they're going to have Netherlands as well, right? So that's going to be very difficult for them to come back from that 2-0. I think with the offside situation, after kind of stepping back and simmering down and taking a look, like you said, it makes sense why it was called. It just seemed we didn't really understand that was the player that was being called offside to begin with. I think we were all focusing on Valencia, who, yes, was offside, but he wasn't part of that actual touch. He was part of the touch afterwards. So if we had just either been told or realized that it was about the player that had his leg behind the keeper, then I think it would have went a little bit smoother. And it didn't help that there were 4 bodies there. It was hard to kind of tell who was who. So I guess in the spirit of the rule, it was corrected. It made sense. Maybe not the greatest rule ever, but it is what it is. So, and then I'll be honest, I did not watch the second half. After the first half, we went out for errands and whatnot. So that was, part of my protest is not watching the second half of Qatar.
Way to take a stance.
But I think overall it was okay.
I think that's the definition of a half-ass stance, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if that's what teams can do with the armbands, I'll go half-ass as well. I'll say something and then I'll do a little bit of it. I don't know what you want me to do. I think also the opening ceremony was interesting. I think visually it was really pretty, but at the core, it was really weird because they had the big message behind the opening ceremony was bringing everyone in peacefully and wanting to show their country to everyone and taking everyone in while we know that that necessarily isn't the case. They don't want to let everyone in. They don't want people to kind of express being who they are themselves. And so it was a little weird to see that, especially with Morgan Freeman talking about inclusion in Qatar. And I'm thinking, this is just Hollywood in a way. It's just a weird situation. But yeah, so that's kind of overall. It was fine. It was kind of what we expected, I think.
I just saw headlines and bits and pieces of it here and there, and then just some quotes, because I'm pretty much against all closing and opening and closing ceremonies. I just usually take a pass on, because it's just a bunch of lasers and lights, like whatever. But yeah, I think the FIFA president was shocked that at the criticism. I don't know how, but at the same time, I think he's saying without saying, shit, we've done some World Cups in really fucked up places, never heard anything, now we're hearing it, kind of a deal. He didn't want to go out and say that, so it was more about like. And here's, I guess, my question. You look at the broadcast, and it's really, really varied, right? Because I watched a little bit of the Turkish one, where, being a Muslim country, some of the values are a lot closer, obviously, but they did make a lot of mentions of while this World Cup was viewed the way it was and stuff like that overall. But they focused more on like the time of year it was and all that kind of stuff. You watched. If you watch like something like BBC, I've seen like clips of it and stuff. They were a lot more outspoken about it. And then you have Fox over there, who acted like we were in Norway and just totally ignored the subject there. Like, what do you make of that whole thing? If it's all about change, shouldn't they kind of talk about it a bit more? Maybe not bash it, but kind of be like, but here is the improvement or something, if that's what we're focusing on. And I'm sure these companies that paid gazillion dollars were kind of told, hey, simmer the criticism down a little bit, but then, use the criticism, but focus on the improvement. Do a 2-in-1. Is that too much to ask?
Yes, it is too much to ask. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's you have, and like you said, I'm sure there's pressure from networks, especially because when we're looking at the American broadcast of it, we feel like almost as if they would be the ones who would be the loudest, because it's always America's seen as this country that always wants to be as as progressive as possible and as inclusive as possible. I mean, to an extent, right? There's too many people in this country to say that we're all one way or another. But they're typically, in the worldview, they're held as a country who is more progressive, and so you would think they would be the most vocal about it. And and so like the BBC necessarily wouldn't, because it's more of a world broadcast than it is an English broadcast in a way, if that makes sense. Because I feel like the BBC spreads across, news-wise, BBC spreads across the world much more than any other network. For in my opinion. So and maybe Sparky's point, where BBC just doesn't have the sponsors, so they don't have to worry about any sort of negative impact, any sort of repercussions, whereas Fox might have those sponsors. But at the same time, you have, who was it? Was it Heineken or Budweiser? One of the beer sponsors of Qatar, that they said that the winning country will get the $75 million worth of beer that was going there, and that they will sue Qatar. And so, and I don't know where I was going with that. Something about sponsors.
You just said, when you said beer, your mind just like,
that
was the last thing you said, and the train of thought was gone.
I like beer, but what were
I can use beer right now. I know it's only 8:15.
Next question.
So apart from,
form.
Honestly, apart from like Qatar showing that they are not suited for it, they made Ecuador look like world beaters. Is Ecuador a lot better than we think, or is Qatar a lot worse than we ever thought?
Yes, to both. It's one of those things where I think Ecuador, and they had mentioned it a few times in the broadcast, is that they have not, now after this Qatar match, they've not conceded a goal in 7 matches. So defensively, they're very good. I know Qatar had maybe 1 or 2 chances that they could have finished, but that was pretty much it. There was just the 1 or 2. There was the one header in the first half, and then I think I saw a highlight late in the second half, 89th minute, where he hit a volley just over the bar. And so I don't think Ecuador is going to do so well against stronger teams, but they're good enough to give them more credit for. I think I had them in second before the tournament to go above Senegal. I think losing Mane is going to be enough for Senegal to not play because they play through him a lot. He is their central figure. So I think Ecuador has a good chance to get out of the group, and I think they're pretty good. In terms of South America, you're always going to compare, Brazil and Argentina, everyone else. And I think Ecuador could be that third or fourth team, depending on how Uruguay does. Then that's kind of what we're looking at there.
I think that's the thing. You look at Ecuador, and they did look, but I mean, Qatar looked so bad. So let me ask you, as like a Polish dude, where we've had World Cups where Poland and Turkey are not there, and while it adds to the flavor of the tournament, I think that's what makes the World Cup a better event than the Euros in general. Is, like I say, like these different styles of play and stuff like that. But you see a team like Qatar out there, and today you see Iran, who's making England, like Sparky says, England make look really good. Which, I mean, obviously on paper they're a lot better team, and on paper England is a lot better than most teams. But does a part of you say, man, how are these guys? I mean, we know why Qatar is there, but like Iran and stuff, you look at some of these teams that are really look like they're not up for it. Do you get that feeling like, man, they should take a couple more from Europe so that my boys could have been there, especially in tournaments where you didn't have Poland, for example?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, while I could sit there and say yes, I think that's what I would like to see. The teams that have made it in most likely due to them being the best of their group, and they can't control where they're from. So sometimes you have weaker teams from Oceania or from Asia that they are able to represent their entire continent because they were the best team out of the groups that they had to play against. And unfortunately, sometimes that means that they're not that great. And obviously, Qatar didn't have to do much to play, just bribe $18 billion worth of money. But so I think we're going to see, especially in 2026, when the field gets expanded to 48 or whatever the number is, that we are going to miss the days when we just had one or two teams that shouldn't have made it, rather than 10 or 12 teams that shouldn't have made it. I think that's where we're going to get to. And I'd much rather have this situation where I'm like, yeah, shoot, I wish Poland would be there instead of Australia, but
yeah.
but
No,
then
that's fair.
In 4 years, we're going to say, oh God, I really wish that Montenegro wasn't there. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to get better by having more teams.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I say, I just wondered, because I know I get that feeling sometimes. Like, you watch, you watched the game yesterday. You're like, I mean, you kidding me? Like, not that Turkey is great, but they're better than this, kind of a deal. But Sparky says, better tournament when you have the best teams, not easy games. But I think, see, that's like, I'm torn on that too, because then it goes back to that's what they wanted with the Super League. I mean, you gotta have some of these teams to have upsets, because let's face it, especially the casual fan. I mean, to somebody like me who doesn't have like a horse in the race necessarily, it's those games make it interesting, where somebody maybe who's not expected to do well is doing well, like the upsets and stuff like that. That possibility is what makes it more entertaining, because it was always, that was the whole thing about the game yesterday. It just felt like, man, these guys can play for like 3 days straight, and there's no way Qatar is winning this game. I get the same sense as, like today's game. Like, they could play like for like 5 days straight. Iran is not going to beat England. You just don't want that either. So let's bring our car friend Alex on board as well. Alex, what's happening, man?
Nothing. I mean, the game right now is basically over, so just kind of hanging out, see if you wanted me to come on or not. So
let me ask you this. We were talking about it earlier. Were you aware that the U.S. team changes captains like underwear?
What was it? Say that one more time.
The U.S. captaincy constantly changes. Were you aware of this? Like, they don't have set captains?
Oh yeah, no, I knew that. No, yeah, I knew it. It basically, we're like Arsenal. We have no idea who's the captain. I think if it's mainly because you look at the U.S. team, and Trevor and I follow the U.S. team a lot, and it's really sad to say, but there's not like an outspoken guy in that entire squad. If I would say who would be the most outspoken guy for U.S., would probably be Zach Steffen, and he's not there for the World Cup. So really, I think it's they're going to give the armband to whoever wants it almost, because there's just not any outspoken guys like Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie. Those two, they're pretty quiet guys. So you don't necessarily want to give it to them. And I can't really think of anybody that would be a captain for USA.
I guess, but I mean, you don't have to always be like yelling and screaming too.
Yeah.
Like, we were talking about with earlier, which Hendo does yell and scream a lot, but you can sometimes have the silent captain as well, like even like a Van Dijk and stuff like that. It's I don't know, like sometimes it's just in the personality of how you lead and stuff like that behind the scenes, and not necessarily yell. One thing I was thinking of is maybe they watch the commercials and there's so much pressure on Pulisic. I mean, seriously, like some of their maybe Starlight guys, maybe they're like, hey, let's not put more pressure on him in terms of being responsible for others too. You do you, man. We'll take care of the team kind of thing. But having said that, Mateusz, do you have a prediction for the games that are coming up next? Like Alex is saying, this much is pretty much dead in the water. We have, because we'll probably be doing this every day, and then we'll kind of like take a look at and like recap the games from before. So next up is Senegal versus Netherlands. Senegal without Mane taking on Van Dijk and the boys. What is your prediction for that one? What do you expect to see?
Oh man, I expect Netherlands to just, I think, dominate most of the game. Going back to what we were talking about earlier with Senegal and missing Mane, who is a central key into their entire team. I don't think that they'll be able to produce much offensively. I think they're going to sit back quite a bit, be really compact, but I think Netherlands will break them down. I think we're looking at about 2-0 Netherlands is where I'm at on that game.
Well, Sparky called it the same thing. Netherlands 2-0 win. I'm going to base my parlay bet based on what you guys are saying, though. So that's why we're playing.
Okay, so Senegal's going to win 7-1.
The whole reason I'm playing this game is I'm doing kind of like a research at the same time. Alex, what do you have for the game?
I say 3-0. I'm a lot with him on the same thing. A lot of their game is played through Mane. They really wanted Ismail Sarr to be kind of like the second guy, but he's really not panning out to be the next Mane. So, to be honest with you, I don't know how Senegal is going to do, because Mane creates the attacking, he does the pressing, he gets the team going. But yeah, I can just see Netherlands putting 3 past them and get a
So is it kind of like a deal though, Mateusz, for like you guys are saying he's the main focal point, and sometimes that can kind of help a team in some ways, where it's almost like everybody plays a bit harder when somebody gets sent off, because you're behind the 8 ball. You think you can help Senegal, especially in the first game like that? They're like, hey, they know Mane is not out there. And, that, I mean, I'm sure everybody over there knows he was the main guy. So does that make everybody say, hey, we got to play even harder because we all know Mane is not there?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always a chance of that. It just kind of comes back to, I think Netherlands are one of the strongest teams in the tournament, period. So even with Mane, I don't know if my prediction will necessarily change. I think Senegal would just have a couple more chances on goal. And it's just one of those things where we can sit here and predict everything, and then who knows? Someone might get kicked in the shin, and maybe Depay goes out, or I don't even know who's going to be starting for the Netherlands right now, to be honest with you. But
they're deep, that's for sure.
They are very deep, and I think maybe if anything's going to be the Netherlands' undoing, is that they are too deep and kind of not finding the right 11 to work with. That's as long as they're all on the same page. I think Mane or not, they would have taken care of the game. But I just think this way, Senegal is just going to play a lot more defensively and not really have as much threat going forward. But it's not to say they won't try harder.
I was just playing the devil's advocate as always.
Yeah.
No, I do agree with you guys. I think Netherlands wins this one. I go with actually. I'm pretty bullish too. I feel like it would be similar to the Iran game. When the first goal comes, the floodgates might open. Depends on how many Netherlands gets then, because it feels like, especially in the group stage, we kind of saw it yesterday with Ecuador too. If Ecuador kind of kept going full speed, they would have probably gotten more. They felt like we got this. All we can possibly get out of this game is 3 points. Let's get the 3 points. No more injuries, and let's keep going. I'm amazed actually they didn't take Valencia out earlier when he was hurt, because that game was pretty much set. But I think it's, as I was talking about on the Discord channel, I think he's one of those players who takes himself out. So like he says, yes, I can't go anymore. Nobody tells him, hey, you can't go anymore, kind of a deal. Because he is kind of like what Mane is to Senegal, or like Mo is to Egypt, the focal point of attack. So last game, Sparky's already calling it and not making a lot of friends in the US. That's why he probably keeps going back to UK to hide for a little bit until people forget and then come back. But so US game, Alex, we'll start with you. Give us a prediction.
I to be honest with you, I agree with Sparky. 2-1 Wales. I think Wales probably, they're going to be considered the underdog in the group. You have all these doubters saying that they're not good enough, but that's the thing, is there's always some surprises when it comes to the World Cup, and I think Wales will surprise us the most at everybody, because we talk about how Senegal and like South Korea are one-dimensional, or they rely on one player. Well, with USA, it's Pulisic, and Pulisic's not having a good game. You know, we're just not scoring. It's just the way it is for Team USA. We average 0.6 goals a game, which is terrible. So I can't see us scoring more than 2 goals in that game. And I think I agree with Sparky. It's either going to be 2-1 or it's going to be 1-0. Wales. I have no faith in this World Cup. And you know, I heard an interesting point. Somebody said it on, I think it was like a TikTok or something. They said Mexico and US need to have terrible World Cups to make the next World Cup something really special. And I agree with that. And we have a lot of young players on Team USA. So if they have a bad World Cup, I think that'll motivate them for the next one. But this World Cup, I think it's just come too soon. We don't have the right coach for it. And I just don't think the players are just quite there yet to make that step to really make this team special. So
how about you, Mateusz? I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree to that, because this is not like, I mean, we're talking 4 years from now. Like, you don't even know how much of this team, in an ideal world, yeah, like everybody is young, they'll be there in 4 years. But form changes, injuries, I mean, look at 4 years ago. If you made a team, it's probably not the team you make right now, etc. Do you buy that, or what do you expect, I guess, out of today's game and US, your team B now that we find out in general?
I don't think, I actually think having a decent tournament would do better in 4 years, because the excitement would be that much higher, especially with the US being one of the hosts in 2026. I think if they have an absolutely terrible tournament, there's going to be another part of the population that goes, well, it's just US soccer. You know, what are we expecting? What's going to happen in 2026? Why are they even trying at this point? You know, so I think if they at least have a decent tournament, and that's not saying they have to get out of the group, but if they play really well in the group and happen to be third behind Wales, but at least play each game well, that could be a decent enough tournament. I think they expect at least the round of 16. I think most of us would think that they are capable of knockout play, of at least getting there, not necessarily progressing past the first round of knockouts, but at least getting there. With that being said, I think it's going to be 1-1. I think I felt like I was pretty low on the US, and then I started seeing the comments, and then I was listening to Alex, and I was like, I guess I'm not as low as I thought I was. So I think it's going to be 1-1. I think the US kind of squeaks a draw late. I think it because the weird thing about this group, we can't see it right now, but Iran is probably the most attack-minded team in the entire group. The rest of the teams are very sit back and counter-ish football teams. So I don't expect much because Wales and US. I don't know who's going to want to go on the offensive. Wales doesn't like being on the offensive. They love countering. They have the speed to counter.
Yeah.
And the US, they might just be there enough to hang with them for the 60, 70 minutes and find that late equalizer. So I think 1-1 is where I'm going.
England just made it 4, by the way, another Saka goal. And yeah, Iran is kind of like running around all over the place, kind of lost at this point. I mean, the game comes to a point where it's just like, yeah, it's like a lost cause for them. They're going to have to, you basically say to yourself, we're going to have to go more on points than anything else at this stage. Yeah, that's interesting. I do agree in terms of what you're saying, Mateusz. I think a semi-decent World Cup would help a lot more. And that does mean to me, getting out of the group stage so that you can say, let's see at home, we can take the next step, blah, 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 get some drive against it. Because I think a poor performance almost takes the whole thing away. But at the same time, I don't know, US is kind of a team that's maybe does not perform well under that pressure of expectation. They're better off not having expectations. So I can see like the other side of the argument as well. I'm kind of like torn on this one, to be honest with you. But I think overall, in terms of as you prepare for this World Cup, a US fan standpoint, I think a semi-decent performance over here helps a bit more, gives you something to look forward to, gives you like some progress to see, and then, the World Cup being home and stuff like that. Sparky says, bring on the subs. I mean, Iran are already thrown in 3 subs in there, and they're just trying to kind of like change things up at this point. I think they're just trying to take something positive into the next game. But 2 more games today, so we'll have basically 3 games to recap tomorrow and 3 more to look forward to. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Grab the second cup and drive safely over there, Alex. And we'll be back. We'll be back tonight, actually, with the gang, with the live podcast at 8 o'clock. I'm sure there'll be a lot of World Cup talk as well over there, along with some like Liverpool stuff. So we'll see you guys then. Take care. Have a great Monday, people.